Being slow today. I wish there was a quicker way to get this thing going live. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook, we're just waiting for the live stream to start on YouTube, and then we can start the discussion. Okay, there we go. Looks like we're live. All right, good morning. Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host today, Samantha Studebaker Carl. I'm with my good friend Dan Sizik, and we're talking about Atomic Habits, Chapter 18, which is entitled The Truth About Talent, When Genes Matter and When They Don't. And but before we get going, I want to give Dan an opportunity to jump out and say hey, and then we can start talking about this. I'm just going to flip over to Facebook and make sure we look like we're live. It looks like we are. Or, nope, that's not it. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, well, my name is Dan Sizik. I'm here in hot Las Vegas because right now it's been not like in a high like 115, 116, 117, 18, and we've had a mild summer to what I think. I've lived here quite a long time. But this last part of summer's been a little bit warmer, and so loving having the air conditioning. Story, but I'm not getting into that. And just glad to be here.
Cool. Cool. Well, I guess it wouldn't be cool if it's 100 and something out there. My goodness, that's hot. But yeah, I'm glad your air is working because that would suck to not have air in 100 plus degrees temperature. And although I would rather be out there in the wintertime, when it's nice and cold and freezing here in Indiana. So, but right now we're looking pretty beautiful. It's in the 70s, a little humid, but it's in the 70s, so it's fairly comfortable. I can have my windows open for a little while till it gets hot. Okay, so today's topic, The Truth About Talent, Chapter 18 for Atomic Habits. And in this chapter, he's talking about how you can really have something work in your favor if, if you have more of a inclination towards whatever that is. And he at the beginning, he's talking about a couple of different athletes, one of which is an Olympic swimmer, and the other one is an Olympic runner, and how one of them, the tall one, is the swimmer, and the short one is the runner, and how they each, because of their kind of genetic makeup, they're more inclined to that particular sport, and so therefore it's easier for them to become successful in that particular sport. And and he mentions that kind of across the board in this chapter of, if you have more of a talent towards one, or not even a talent necessarily, but if something comes naturally to you and you focus on that, then you're going to improve a lot better and you're going to be more successful with it than if it's something that you really struggle with. And, when he was talking about the height of the two people and how the swimmer, he was really tall, and so of course that made it easier for him to go through the water and have longer strokes and just go faster. And then the guy that was the runner, because had his shorter legs and he could move them faster, he could all of those things, so that was better for him as far as running goes. So anyway, that's kind of how he started the chapter out. Did you get something else out of that that little part there where he was talking about the athletes, Dan?
Actually, yeah, because I all of this chapter, but the beginning that was interesting to me to note, and they noted this in the was they both had the same inseam on their legs, so they both had the same. Because like I looked at like some of me and my family members, and some of us, it looks like we have rough or and yet my brother's, I think his inseam's not far different than mine, so his body's taller, and like me, my body's shorter, but yet I have longer legs, but yet my this part of me, so I identify with that. I kind of understand it. But that was the interesting thing that they both had. So, but in that, and to bring out the point I was getting at, is for Michael Phelps being a swimmer, in order to be able to get through the water, he needed that longer upper body and the bigger, wider. I mean, if you've seen how, as they call it, his wingspan, how big of a wingspan he has, that comes into play for him to being able to swim and get himself through the water as quickly as he does. So therefore, he doesn't need these big, long, lanky legs. He just needs to be able to have them be strong enough to help kick, and arms do most of the work. But with a runner, he needs the legs to be the focal point, and even though there's the same inseam, they're the stronger part of him, and they're what get him and propel him over. But he needs a shorter, more condensed body for being able to break through and cut through the wind, I think, as he's running, and to be more aerodynamic. So therefore, he needed that little, shorter torso, and that's what helps, is part of how, as he says here, understanding how your genetics can help play into, your advantages. And he goes in and talks about how that towards your habits and stuff. Interesting that they both, it's that just kind of, because I'm looking at him and seeing how tall Michael Phelps is, and then picturing, because even though this runner is taller than me, but I could correlate with him to my height, because I'm like 5'6" or so he's like 5'8" or something like that we're talking about. So I'm like, okay, but that's just really kind of just, standing side by side, their legs would probably pretty much be the same length.
Yeah, I thought that was just really interesting too, Dan, and it makes sense. I think in some ways we kind of know, some people are predisposed to be better at one thing than they are at something else, and so it's not really anything new. I mean, he was just kind of like rounding up this subject with he was just saying that the people at the top of any competitive field are not only well trained, but they're also well suited to the task. And so he's suggesting that, if you really want to be great, select the right place to focus is critical. And, and I can relate to that, sports a little bit. I'm more predisposed to riding a bike. I don't know why. That works better for me than running. Running is just really difficult for me. And I don't know if it's because of my body shape or my back issues or I don't know what it is, but I've never felt like I wanted to run. It was just not in my mental or physical makeup, not for me. But bicycling, I love it. I get pleasure out of that, and and I enjoy it. And I've never been competitive by any means because I'm not really a competitive person, but I enjoy that at least. And I think that anytime we try something new is we kind of get an idea of whether we like it or not. I feel like that's part of it right there, is just the enjoyment of it as much as the natural ability to do it, if you will. Um, so then he goes on and he's like, so how do you figure it out? And how do you figure out what you're good at if you don't even know, if you don't already know? And so let's see, he's talking about habits again, and picking the right habit is, he says pick the right habit and progress is easy. Pick the wrong habit and it's more difficult. And this is a kind of a good thing. I've heard stories also where there's been a person who has excelled at something that they weren't really predisposed to, suggest such as like basketball. There's mostly basketball, most all the guys are like really tall, but every now and then there'll be this little guy will come along and he'll be super awesome too, but he probably has to work 3 times as hard because he's so small compared to all the other guys. But at the same time, if he enjoys it because he has some other ability or just predisposition for it because it is something that he enjoys, then it isn't hard work for him, or it wouldn't be as hard of work as it would be for someone who was not that way. So, do you know much about
Well,
basketball, Dan? I've heard those stories.
well, I was
I've
gonna,
heard of.
I know of one person that you're talking about, and he was an excellent basketball player, and so I think he had some natural ability for playing it, but he was just small. I can't remember his height. He wasn't a whole lot taller than me, and in basketball, that he was short, and that was Bud Webb. He could play. He could. I think he was even known to dunk a couple times and stuff. And so, but you know, I think he used some of what his abilities were and focused on those and made those his key things that he worked on to where he could develop into the basketball player that he became. And he was on a you know professional team, and he was on for a while. So with that, I can't remember who he played for, but I remember hearing stories about him and stuff and things like that. And going back to like what you were talking about with exercising, for me, you know, um, don't I'm not the craziest. My roommate loves to run. He loves to run. He loves to, and he actually like on the streets and stuff. Gym, but he's been doing it in the heat. And his daughter likes to run and chase, and she's always wanting you to chase her and catch her and stuff. So I see a little bit of that natural, you know, eh, eh, you know, genetic thing going on there. But for me, um, even though I'm not keen on running, but yet I love playing tennis. And when I play tennis, to me, it's not work. It's fun. Even though when I have to practice and stuff, it's still not work to me in the sense of, yes, I'm doing my drills or this or that, or I'll go and hit against a blackboard. But to me, I get enjoyment out of it. And I've seen statistics and stories where they say in the course of a tennis match, you can run over 5 miles in a tennis match. And I really thought that was it out, but is because of the wind sprints you get the little short wind bursts because you're running to get to a short ball, or you have the long rallies where you're going back and forth at the baseline because you're having a long rally, so you're not running full speed, or to get your you have to run up to even though it's not a short you know drop shot, but it might be in the court a little bit more, and you have to kind of run up to that and back, and so all the aspects of that, I never realized how much running I was doing, but it never felt like it, and it never felt like work. And but after I was done, I had a workout, and it's interesting how when you can kind of use your mindset and natural inclinations and where your natural abilities go towards, how it doesn't seem so much like work too either. And I think with the habits, I think that's what he's kind of trying to lead us into on that thought. So that was just my thought that I was going through in my head.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like this chapter is almost geared more towards just almost career paths than it is so much about habits, because you talk so much about trying to figure out what works for you. But I guess at the same time, I mean, if we look at the diet industry, obviously everybody has their own way of doing a diet that works for them, and you have to find the one that works for you in order for you to continue on a diet path if you're willing to change, the way you eat and that sort of thing. And, and for my husband and I, just trying to find something that we can both agree on, because if we don't agree on it, then we have stuff in the house that the other person, could be tempted by, or isn't going to work on their diet or whatever. So, there's that whole figuring it out kind of thing so that we both can be successful in our nutritional intake aspect of our life. But anyway, so he kind of was going on to talk about how to figure out maybe what you're what you're good at and or what works for you. And he kind of teases a little bit. He's like, generally it's trial and error, but if we really want to find out something sooner, then we got to focus on figuring it out. And otherwise, we just spend our whole lives trying something new all the time and never find something that really works for us. And so then he gives all these questions about how to figure it out. And one is, what feels like fun to me, but work to others. What makes me lose track of time? You kind of mentioned that a little bit, or not really time per se, but with your tennis and running, is you don't, when you're having a good time, then you don't even notice you're running, right? So that's kind of the same thing. It's like losing track of time when you're doing something that you enjoy. Um, it goes by fast, right? Well, and for instance, for me, like when I was working my retail job, there was definitely areas in that job where I could go and I could work and be perfectly happy and time would fly right by, and then I would go and work in another department where I was doing something I didn't like so very much, and it would seem like it would just drag on and on and on forever. So I think we've probably all experienced that. And so then it's just a matter of kind of figuring out, as far as your habits go, is just asking yourself these questions. Where do I get greater returns than the average person, or what comes naturally to me? Um, he went on to say also, oh, I really like this last part where he's talking about, if you're trying to be competitive in some way. And of course, for me, this kind of goes along the lines of in business. He's talking about the artist from Dilbert, Scott Adams, and how he became really successful in his field because he was both a comedian and also a an artist. And when he combined those two things, that kind of pushed him above typical most other people, because there's not as many people doing those two things together. So he kind of specialized and was able to be really successful. Whereas if he'd focused on just the artist or just the comedian, it would be harder for him to compete in those areas. Um, so he kind of carved out his own little niche, and and I think that we can all do that kind of a thing. It's just carve out like a little niche and wherever we are, so that we just kind of weed out some of the competition, because if we're doing something more specialized, then there's not as many people doing it, right? So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's, knowing, I think this is going to sound weird the way I say it. I think we all know ourselves, but I don't think we know ourselves in the best possible ways to understand ourselves, if you can kind of understand that oxymoron there. Because, because there are times like other people will see, certain traits or certain things in us, and sometimes they'll try to tell me or say, "Oh, you're really good," and I'll just like, you know. But if I were to really listen to them and really take a look, you know, it might help point me in some of those directions too, as to some of the things that maybe I'm predisposed to. I can't say that word. Um, that I don't really ever think or focus on, or it doesn't seem super important to me. But other people see it, and I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by not listening or paying attention to some of those things that people say, and maybe because we don't like me, I analyze myself like crazy all the time, because I'm analytical person. So I look at this and say, okay, where? But there are times where I kind of skip over certain areas because, it might be that it is an area I feel I'm not as strong in, and other people are trying to tell me, no, you really have that, capability, or you have that, and I think sometimes if we, were to listen to some of the outside things of people that we really trust, that can also help be a, insight to, you know, some of these genetics or, uh, you know, things that we have within can you utilize to help us change that habit or something like, or make the new habit or get rid of the old habit and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And of course, with habits, it's so funny. I guess it just really depends on what we're talking about, because I mean, if you're just trying to stop drinking so much coffee, how does this even relate to it? I don't even know. Or maybe, I don't know. What other habit? Getting up earlier in the morning, if that's a habit you want to create, then, how does this correlate? I don't know. It's kind of one of those weird chapters. I feel like, okay, in some ways, sure. I mean, I guess if we're talking about sports, obviously, if you want to get more exercise, you should choose something that you're going to enjoy. I mean, that makes sense. But I don't know. Some of the rest of this, I feel like it's just more fluff for this chapter for this book. I don't know.
Well,
I've enjoyed this book, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel like it's way too long. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. I think he could have really narrowed a lot of this stuff down into just a couple of shorter chapters, but that's my thoughts.
well, I'm
Um,
gonna I'm gonna pull out a little bit here where it says how your personality influences your habit. He says your genes are operating beneath the surface of every habit. Indeed, beneath the surface of every behavior. Genes have been shown to influence everything from the number of hours you spend watching television to your likelihood to marry or divorce to your tendency to get addicted to drugs, alcohol, or nicotine. There's a strong genetic component to how obedient or rebellious you are when facing authority. And I think in looking at that and what he's saying, and I think this is goes in tandem with what I was just saying a little bit ago. I think it's looking at ourselves, and sometimes we don't like to see these genetics or personalities or these things that are involved in everything that we do because we don't like them ourselves and we do want to change them, but yet we don't know how to look at it to make those changes so that way we then be able to feel, I guess, for lack of a better word, maybe feel better about ourselves or feel like we're making progress on the changes that we want to make. So I think what this chapter does is make us look at ourselves a little bit more than we like to look at ourselves and focus in on some of those habits or things that we want to change, but it makes us look at the underlying reasons why we've not ever done that before because of some of our genetics and what we're a little predisposed to and things like that. And, like I really don't want to, after work, I'm just tired. I want to come home and relax. And I tend to then sit in front of the boob tube, watching or, Netflixing or then, binge watching or finding a show instead of rather doing some of the other things I really do want to do. But I come home and I'm just tired. And, after doing my 8 hours at work and then maybe 2 or 3 hours Ubering afterwards and stuff like that, it's just like, I just want to just do nothing. But is that really in line with what I really I say, okay, I want to go home. I'd like to get this done. I'd like to really sit down and really get back into cooking more meals rather than doing the fast, easy, stuff, like hamburger helper stuff or or macaroni and cheese or those little quick dinners that are already kind of put together or TV dinners. Rather going back to like my roommate, he cooks a lot for him and his daughter, and he does it, but he's a cook, and so he's very good at it, and he can just take stuff and whip stuff up. Whereas for me, I have to think, okay, I want to do this, so I need to do that, do that. So I think it's making me take a look at myself to have that. I'd really like to be able to come home and be like him and just say, okay, I got this in the fish, all that together, whip this up, and make a decent dinner. And I'm just like, okay, that's just, I love to cook when I can cook for other people, but for me, I just don't want to go through all that hassle, you know. So I think in that sense, I think that's kind of what it's making me do is like, and I'm like, I don't really want to focus on that about me. I want to be able to find a way to have it be where I can just come in and go, oh, okay, I want to do this and get that done, and and be able to go wham bam and like my roommate. So, I I think that's what this chapter is doing. In that sense, for me, it's making me kind of just pull out the things that I really have not wanted to focus on because they kind of make me go, oh, okay, I don't like that feeling. And when we all get to that point where we don't like that feeling, we tend to, I don't want to deal with that now, type of thing. So that's just my little bit of, you know, take on that. And I don't know if that's, maybe some of what you're feeling or if, you know, but
Well,
that's kind of what
when
I'm
you were
feeling.
saying that, it made me think, okay, if we can kind of pull together some of these other chapters into this one, as if we take this one and we recognize, okay, these are the areas that we're good at, that we have this natural inclination toward, and these habits are easy for us to do, obviously because they're already a part of our life. But then for the things that are less easy for us because we don't have that natural inclination for it, is then we have to kind of plan ahead so that we can use some of these other techniques of making it easy, making it obvious, making it I don't know what was some of the other ones, making it satisfying, those kind of things, where he was talking about these different 4 laws of habit changes, or so many laws of habit changes. And that's kind of the key, is that maybe this is the chapter that kind of brings it all together. Is if you don't have a habit that you want to have, is kind of identify what the issue is, and then you have to create your life around making that change so that it's easy for you. And so like for you, if you just wanted to eat better per se, is that instead of buying like the hamburger helper or whatever, and if you don't want to cook, then just maybe buy the easy, quick meals that are already made, and all you got to do is warm them up, but they're better. I don't know. Um, I know for me, it's I had to do something completely different. Like I think I mentioned on one of the previous ones that my husband and I are doing this like no eat out challenge, and so that has been kind of a thing with us. Is that forces us to have to do something at home, and when you're trying to eat better, you don't have as much of the crap in the house. That also forces you to have to cook something, or at least prepare something in some way, because fast and easy food from the grocery store is not, it's not something that you have to prepare. It just, you just throw it in the oven and it's good to go, or, microwave or whatever. But when you're buying more vegetables and meats and that kind of thing, it's like you just have no choice. You have to do something with it, whether you want to cook something or not, And I kind of look ahead even on that, because then I'm like, okay, well, on the weekend, if I plan ahead just a little bit, I can pre-cook up some meat so that the rest of the week, or at least partway through the week, I will have meat ready to come home, and I can eat it quickly. I don't have to prepare it. I don't have to spend all that time, doing it, because it's all kind of pre-prepared, and or at least set up in such a way that it's easier. So there's less preparation involved when it comes down to the time of actually doing it. So that helps, for me anyway. So I don't know. I guess that's just what he's trying to say there. I mean, if you enjoy cooking, then obviously when you come home, it's going to be easy to just, I'm going to whip all this stuff up. I'm going to have a good time doing it. But then for those of us who are like working long hours and it's tiring, and you come home and you just are like, oh, I don't want to cook stuff. I don't want whatever. Because we have to pretty much make it impossible for us not to cook or whatever, we just have to force ourselves to do it because we're cutting out this one thing and we didn't buy this other stuff, and so all we have is this, and this is what we have to deal with. So we can either not eat or we can make this whatever it is. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the more that we can do those things with different habits, and I think it's just a matter of figuring out, what is going to work. So, it's like for some people, getting up in the morning is easy, and other people, it's easier to work at night, and yeah. So I'm a morning person. My husband is a night person. He'll stay up all night doing stuff. And is my train getting too loud? Here, you talk for a minute, and then let me let this train go by.
Well, I was going to say, as you were talking about this and how, this is, I think, kind of a culmination, like you were saying, I agree with you, but you were talking about having maybe put more of these together or something like that. But I think, and put it in perspective, I think if he had put this in with some other, I don't think it would have given the focus to some of those other chapters on some of the points he was. Two, I think if this was anywhere else in the book, or because towards the end, I think it might have turned. It probably would have turned me off a little bit. Like, oh, I don't like this feeling. I want to, I don't want to be hit on the forehead yet with, looking at the things I don't like or aren't comfortable. I want to understand ways of what can help me get here, so that when I get to this point of bringing it all together, oh, okay, this is my personality, my genetics, my predisposition, and some of this plays into this. But these aspects that are there ahead are ways we can help get through this, so that way it's not so uncomfortable to move forward with wanting to make the changes we want to make. And I think that's kind of how I'm looking at it, that, okay, if I had read some of this in the earlier part of the book, I probably would have said, okay, I don't like this book, I don't want to keep reading it, because it's only telling me all the things I wrong and think that are wrong, change, and where's the help so I can change. So in that sense, I think that's how I'm looking at it. And I think it's kind of in the right spot where it needs to be, is helping me go, okay, everything he's talked about, coupled with this, working together and taking what you, like you said, make it easy, make it enjoyable, make it satisfying, make it, all those things to put together. If I keep those in mind as I'm looking at this and moving forward with whatever habits that I want to change, good or bad, I think I'll have more success and have it be somewhere else in the book.
Good point. Sorry, I only heard about half of what you said because the train was going by. I don't know how loud it was coming across on that end when before I muted, but yeah, I only heard like the last couple of sentences. But either way, I know you made some great points.
Okay, yeah, fine. I could hear it, but it wasn't bothering me. I love trains, so it was like, oh, a train, yay! I
yeah,
wanted to go look
got
at
louder
it.
as it got closer. When you heard it, it was just getting. I had my sliding glass door open, so it was really loud right here. The train track is like, I don't know, 20 feet from my back window, so maybe a little bit further than that, maybe like 30 feet, but it's not very far. Anyway, I guess we can just wrap up for today. I think we covered it. Yeah, but we can't hear, so. All right, well, let's wrap it up for today. So we have 2 chapters left, chapter 19 and chapter 20. Both of them are really, really short chapters. So I don't know, we may just cover both chapters in the next discussion and then wrap this book up. But guess we need to start thinking about another book. I know Catherine mentioned one not too long ago that sounds like a really interesting one. So we may jump into that one. I don't know. But for those of you who are watching, if you're getting value out of this, just let us know. If you'd like to participate, you're welcome to. You can find us on Facebook in the group Mindset Mastery Collective. And you can also get there directly by just going to mindsetmasterycollective.com. That will take you right into our Facebook group. And if you'd like to participate, you can. So with that, got anything else?
Yes,
Okay.
I was gonna jump out in
Oh,
one
sorry.
last little couple things, because I was gonna go over the chapter summary, but I wanted to go over this one little bit that he talks about just before that. It says how to get the most out of your genes. Our genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it. They tell us what to work hard on. Once we realize our strengths, we know where to spend our time and energy. We know which type of opportunities to look for and which type of challenges to avoid. The better we understand our nature, the better our strategy can be. So with that, like I said, he talks about that. And the summary says, the secret to maximizing your odds of success is to choose the right field of competition. Pick the right habit and progress is easy. Pick the wrong habit and life is a struggle. Genes cannot be easily changed, which means they provide a powerful advantage in favorable circumstances and a serious disadvantage in unfavorable circumstances. Habits are easier when they align with your natural abilities. Choose a habit that best suits you. Play a game that favors your strength. If you can't find a game that favors you, create one. Now that's a point I think, that we didn't really look at or really focus on. But sometimes you can be very middle of the road on stuff, and so you step outside of your own game or your own way to get there, utilizing a lot of the points he's pointed out in the book. And I think that's a point to bring out, that sometimes you're going to be kind of in that middle road thing and you're not sure. That's where you focus back and pull in everything from the other parts of this book to help you get there, to be able to move forward, to then lean into the strengths and move forward. And then genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it and they tell us what to work on. Sorry, because we usually cover the summary before we end.
Right. Sorry. I wasn't thinking. Good point. Good point. And we kind of did touch on the last thing where it was talking about if you can't find a game that favors you, is to create one. When we were talking about the comic that, or the Dilbert comic, where he was an artist and a comic, and he kind of carved out his own little niche in that way. So we touched on that just a tiny bit. So. And I, like I said in that earlier, I was like, I felt like it was more geared towards business than necessarily habits. But I don't know, maybe. I guess if we take all the different habits that we want to change and we kind of create our own little routine, that's kind of the same thing, right? So our own way of handling things or doing stuff compared to other people in order to achieve the same results. So, yeah. All right. That's all I got. You got anything else?
Got
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for watching it, everybody. Just, give us a comment, like the video, dislike it. I don't know, something. Let us know what you think. All right. I'm hitting the end button.